I call to order the town board meeting workshop. And I would welcome all the people that's watching online. We don't have any visitors in the chamber tonight. Everything will be virtual. We will be covering some workshop items. And at this time, I'll turn it over to Kelly to go through that agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, before we start,
Yes.
I know on the agenda, but I just want to make sure, Dave, do we need to do a roll at all?
We do. We need to do a roll call of all the members.
All right, let's go ahead and do that, get that over with, and we'll pick up Michelle when she gets here. So, Robin, can you start calling roll, please? And also, I think Michelle needs the link again, if you can send that to her.
And Robin is muted.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if you would signify your presence by saying aye after I call your name. Commissioner Wilson,
Aye.
Commissioner Sutton,
Aye.
Commissioner Vilga,
Aye.
Commissioner Sneed,
Aye.
and I don't see that Commissioner Medley has signed in yet, so I will send her that link again.
Okay. All right, thanks, Robin. Kelly, it's all yours now. You on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Town Board. Tonight's work session is got quite a few items, of which we start off with the introduction of the budget. Last week you received some PowerPoint presentation on it that we'll go through a little bit. And then also I hope that you, and I do know that you all picked up a copy of your recommended budget. This effort really began back in January with all the department heads and their teams bringing forth their budget recommendations. And then throughout the last 3 months, we've been working on it, and including a work session with you all about 2 weeks ago, or maybe about a month ago, where you met with the department heads and heard most all of the budget recommendations at that time. There will be a couple of new items that we bring forth tonight, but most everything you have seen or heard already. Generally, tonight we want to spend time just reviewing it with you. If there are questions, tonight's a good night to ask those, but also knowing that you've had the budget for limited time, there will be a public hearing on May 4th, which is another time that you may ask any questions. At any point at that meeting or between May 4th and June 30th, you must adopt the budget. So whenever you're prepared and feel satisfied that you have a budget that you can support, then we are ready to adopt that budget. As we talked about in the work session, and as I talk about in my intro letter to you, this budget really comes in a completely different environment than a year ago. As I thought about a year ago, you know, the terms that we used often was uncertainty, caution, conservative, and adjusting were just some examples of those terms that we thought about as we developed last year's budget and tried to recognize that we really didn't know what was going to happen during the pandemic. This year, this budget, I use terms such as optimism, brightness, changing, and a lot of resourcefulness. That we are at a point where now I think we're actually launching into where we're thought we were going to do last year, but this is the real launch of what I would call kind of the next generation of Rolesville. As you think about the history of Rolesville, there are kind of generational periods of times, right? And a bunch of those generations have significant events that occur that kind of signify the start of that generation. This period of time that we're about ready to enter into really is generational. You are going to be embarking on some projects and some activity levels that this community hasn't seen for several years. This budget has anticipated, the previous budgets has anticipated this year coming, and here we are. And so now this budget starts to fully fund those. In addition to, though, we have other good news, is which we'll have some additional funding coming to us in the next year. As early as possibly June, we'll have some of that Federal American Recovery Plan Act money that you heard a little bit more about, and then a year from then. This budget does not anticipate any use of that at all. We don't know what the conditions are of that fund, those funds yet are going to be. We wanted to make sure that the items that we want to do and make sure we get accomplished in this budget, we can within our current revenue streams. And so we now can focus on that effort when we understand those funds and not have to kind of go back and reconsider items in this budget. So with that, I do think this is a very positive budget. It's a very insightful budget. And I'm looking forward to this year with everything we have anticipated to get accomplished with this budget. I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let her kind of go through the PowerPoint and more details of the budget. And we'll spend a few moments on it. And then if you had any questions, you want to spend time on it, we have a little bit of time tonight's meeting to do that. So Amy.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with the video, with the slideshow. So while we're waiting for the technology to catch up here, if all of you could go ahead, if you have your budget document, if you could go ahead and grab that, because I'll be referring to pages in that document as we go through the slides. Looks like slideshow is out there. So there we go. So as Kelly mentioned, I think his intro pretty much covered this. We talked about this the last time we met in March to talk about the budget. The theme of this budget really is all about preparing for growth. With the growth with the 2,500 lots that have been approved and the population that will come with those lots as they're built out, with the Main Street project, and with other big work items that are on your agenda over the coming months. So what we're trying to do is make sure that we prepare for growth in terms of facilities, equipment, technology, and staff. If you want to go ahead and turn to page 14 of your budget. Where it outlines the strategic plan that you adopted about a little over a year ago now. And so that strategic plan really laid the framework for this entire budget process. And everything, as we go through this presentation and as we worked through the budget process this year, we really tried hard to make sure that everything that we're bringing to you is consistent with that strategic plan. And as well as the organizational study that was completed in December of last year. So this is always a good place to start. We want to make sure that this is our guiding light as we go forward, and this is what drives the direction we're headed in. If you want to go ahead and turn to page 25 of the document. This page shows you the budget history, which is also reflected here on this chart. This chart obviously is at a much higher summary level than what you see in the document. What you see here is the general fund proposed for this year at just 11.9 million, just shy of 12 million. Now, that does reflect an increase of 26% over the previous year. Seems a little high, no, there's a reason for that. And the reason that that percentage increase is so high is due to some appropriations for the capital program. Okay, when you take out capital appropriations last year and you take out capital appropriations in this proposed budget, the increase from last year to this proposed budget goes down to 11%. Okay.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Okay, when I look at page 25, and I marked this earlier today, under other revenues, $2,001,700 to $2,001,007, I assume that is the cobblestone proceeds.
So that is in this proposed budget,
Yes.
that $2 million, the substantial portion of that $2 million reflects appropriation of fund balance. There is a significant appropriation of fund balance in this budget, which we'll talk about as we go along.
Okay, so I was wrong. Okay, all right.
Right. So cobblestone, because that has already closed, that actually shows in this current fiscal year
Okay.
off budget. We'll see that in the financial statements this fall as we close out the fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, so when we net out capital projects, the general fund increase is about 11%, which also seems a little high, a little unusual, until you remember what Kelly was talking about just a moment ago. Last budget year, we were really talking about uncertainty and conservatism. And so when we put together the budget last year, we reduced what we actually thought revenues would be. And we cut back on some programs and deferred some expenditures because we were so uncertain about what would be coming over the coming year as we went through the pandemic. Okay, so 11%, given that conservative estimate of last year, makes a little bit more sense and in line with where we've been. So now let's look at the capital projects fund. On the slide, you can see capital projects just shy of 2 million last year, now up to almost 13 million in this proposed budget. Again, it has to do, that's the fund, that's the capital projects. The significant portion of that 12.9 million is due to the Main Street Vision Plan project. That accounts for 9.3, almost $9.4 million of that fund budget.
So, Amy, all the matching for that project is just a pass through. Is that correct? Because we don't pay $9 million, I don't think.
That's right. When we budget, we have to budget for the entire project. So, but we budget for the amount the town contributes as well as the amount we expect to get from the federal grant. So this is a comprehensive budget from all sources.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And that's why it looks a little high, because it includes the federal grant. And it also includes the expected 3.25 million associated with the Walbrook development, where we will be reimbursed by the developer of that project for those costs. But the actual activity of the project is all going to be rolled in together. Okay.
So roughly, do you know of that 12.9? Roughly how much is Rolesville's contribution?
Let's see. Well,
Just slide on Main Street Vision, Amy.
yeah. We could even, well, if you want to go to page 62.
No, we don't have to jump ahead, so we'll cover that then.
Oh, it's okay. We can go there. It's a good way to get in depth into the document. So on page 62, under the FY 21-22 column, you see reimbursements, 3.25 million. So that's the funds we expect to get from the developer. Then there's the federal grant of a 4.8 million. You see development fees, 480,000. So that's the appropriation from fund balance of the street fees. Then there's 213,000 of general fund balance appropriation for some other projects not related to Main Street Vision. And then the transfer in from the general fund of 788,000. So for the streets and sidewalks portion, at least, that's the sum of those revenues.
So the mayor's question was, how much of that is town, is it the 480,000 or the matching balance? What's the matching funds going to be?
Right, 400. So the matching funds are the 480,000 and the 788,000.
So a majority of it is coming from the first two items, which is reimbursements and grants.
That's right. Okay. Yep, and then but going back to the slide, again, you can see that the grand total, if you look at those raw numbers without understanding what's behind them with the capital projects, it's a little overwhelming because the total budget goes up a significant amount. But this is an unusual year, and we talk about that quite a bit in the document because of these large capital projects and the appropriated fund balance that goes along with them. All right, so we're gonna move along and talk about the general fund itself. So this is these charts are on page 28. So
I'm sorry, what was that,
normally,
20 what?
sorry, yeah, 28.
20, okay, thank you.
Sure. So normally when I show these pie charts, I show you this pie for the entire general fund. But again, this year is a little unusual and it distorted things in an unusual way. So what I did this year is I netted out capital appropriations. So this shows you true operating budget in the general fund. So when we do that, nothing surprising here. This is what we've always seen. Ad valorem taxes, vast majority of your funds. And then taxes and licenses, that's primarily made up of the sales tax, local option sales tax receipts. So property tax, we're still using Wake County's property assessment valuation. They anticipating about 6.7% growth in the property tax base for the new year. And we are anticipating the allowed collection percentage, which is based on prior year actuals. So close to 99% collection rate is what we estimate there. That second one I mentioned, the sales tax receipts. Again, like we talked about when we met last month, this past year is probably not a good baseline because consumer behavior was so different. So we're taking a conservative projection here of 4% growth in sales tax for next year. Then we move over to the expenditure side. Again, nothing surprising here. What we've seen over the last several years, public safety, about 41% of the operating budget. This tracks with what has been in the past. Your second largest area is public works and solid waste. And then third, parks and recreation, taking up about 11% of your operating budget. And then all the other office-based activities broken out end up being about 25%.
Amy, this is Sheila. I have a question about this slide. The public safety percentage seems huge. How does that compare with other municipalities our size? I know you said it's tracked that way for a while, but how does that compare with other municipalities?
Well, you have to be careful when making comparisons. you know, if we look at other municipalities, some of them have water and sewer systems. And so the number of personnel might be a little different. Some of them, like for instance, they might have their own internal solid waste collection operation, whereas we contract that out. And that's an operation that comes very personnel heavy. So, you know, it's hard to make direct apples to apples comparisons because there's a lot of these little things that can distort some of those comparisons. But generally, you do see that public safety, and I'm speaking very generally here, but public safety tends to be one of the larger categories of expenditures because it is so personnel intensive.
I understand, but I would like to have some basis of comparison to that. I mean, we're large enough now that we could look at other municipalities, not necessarily in Wake County. There's probably a couple to see how we compare as far as public safety, period. I don't know that I've ever seen that. And so I'm curious because it looks so skewed to me. And I know that safety matters. Obviously, we want to have a safe community, but I'm just curious as to how it compares to other municipalities, whether it's in Wake County or not, specifically along police and fire.
Okay. And are you interested in terms of the total expenditures in that area or personnel or both?
Both.
Okay. We'll pull something together for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a quick question in regards to what Sheila said. So Sheila, are you saying this number is too high in comparison, or you just don't know?
I don't have a comparison.
Okay.
I'm just saying when I look at the chart, it's skewed. That's why I asked about how it compares to other municipalities our size, because it's a large chunk. So I don't have a comparison.
Oh, okay. All right. I was just wondering if it was too large or too small, or where it was that you saw it, because I didn't see anything. So I was trying to get where you were. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Looking at revenues. So page 34 of the document starts the conversation about general fund revenues. Just the highlights here. This budget proposes maintaining the current tax rate of 46 cents. It proposes maintaining the solid waste fee at $22 per month or $264 per year as it is billed on the property tax bill. And then as we discussed last month, there's several changes to the fee and charges schedule, primarily to better reflect the cost of staff time. It's been many years since we updated that fee schedule, and we build upon the work that was done last summer by our MPA student. As Kelly mentioned, what's not included in this budget is any funds for ARP Act or anything from the transportation infrastructure bill that's being considered. So just a few of the highlights. Again, there should not be too many surprises. Most of this we talked about when we met last month. The organizational assessment has some recommendations that are carried out in this budget, namely the creation of a human resources department and the human resources director. There's some funding in here to continue diversity, equity, and inclusion programming. And this budget reflects the new positions that were recommended in that organizational assessment. Technology and equipment is also a big area. Includes funds for fiber connectivity at Town Hall and the transition to more cloud-based technologies. Includes funds for new permitting software and for software in the police department for field training and to recover stolen property. Third, appearance and environment is a big category here. Code enforcement, part-time funding, funding for a part-time position for code enforcement and associated costs. The purchase or lease of a new street sweeper to maintain streets and help with stormwater runoff. And then also funding for stormwater mapping and infrastructure standards. I'm sorry, I meant to mention all of this is tracking to the manager's letter on page 5 of your budget. 5 and 6. I think we're on to page 6 now. So other categories included here are economic development. There's funding for a small area plan for the 401 bypass and Fowler Road area. There's funding to continue the relationship with the Chamber of Commerce and to finish up work on the LDO and potentially start work on the revisions to the comprehensive land use plan. Next, in terms of programming, there's funding here to return athletic programming back to pre-COVID levels, trying to work in that direction, as well as additional funding for community events such as the 4th of July. And then finally, there's funding in here for the fire department reunification or fire department unification conversation. There is $10,000 included in the fire department budget for that purpose. Obviously, employees and benefits are an important part of the budgeting process and a significant part of that budget. 4 additional full-time personnel are included in here. Again, all consistent with the organizational study in terms of the assistant town manager and the recreation superintendent. And then there's also 2 police officers included to cover a swing shift for those high traffic times in the afternoons. Not mentioned here because it's not a permanent full-time position, but is also that part-time code enforcement officer. There's funding in here to find someone to do that on a part-time basis. Finally, employee
Amy, I
pay.
have a question.
Go right ahead.
Amy, just a quick question, maybe Kelly, and I may have just forgotten. So what is a recreation superintendent?
So that is a position that will help with some of the succession planning as recommended in the organizational assessment. It would be a supervisory position within the Parks and Recreation Department. So the program coordinators would report to a recreation superintendent, and then that superintendent reports to the director. Particularly with a lot of the capital projects, greenway development standards, things like that going on, allows staffing in that area to concentrate on some of the to separate out some of the long range duties with the day-to-day operations.
Is that some of the role of the assistant town manager? I remember us discussing that a while ago, and I may be conflating the two. Do you all recall that, or do you recall that, Amy?
Right. So some of what was talked about for the assistant town manager is, quite a bit, is taking on some of the communications duties and also overseeing the public works function of the town. So that eventually that public works would be carved. Right now it's being supervised by Parks and Recreation. Over time, we would be able to transition that over to that assistant town manager.
But no managing.
So
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
sorry, Sheila. No, go ahead, Sheila. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I just remember a discussion about the assistant town manager helping manage projects, some of those big projects.
Yes, that as well. But again, if we move forward with some of these larger parks programs, there's going to be involvement probably with, with both sides of that house in terms of making sure that those projects move forward.
Thanks.
So will there be someone in charge of public works? Or will that actually stay with the assistant town manager? So is that not an
You wanna
Amy
answer
question?
that, Amy?
That more of a, that's a Kelly
I
question?
know Kelly, you had some thoughts on that, so I'll let you. I'll
Yeah,
let you
so
run with
no,
that.
as it says on page 8, if you on the in the budget, has a description of all the different positions. And the assessment called out the public the assistant town manager to take over public works, project management, including assisting on project management, excuse me, communication and other responsibilities, and then acting as town manager when needed. So it will be a primary person on some of the significant projects that we're going to be building in over the next few years.
So I did see that, but it really didn't answer the question for the long term. That's why I was asking. But
Did
if
I
this is
answer
what
it?
we're looking at for here. I'm sorry, did I, my camera freeze?
No,
Should
did
I
I
repeat
answer the question?
No, you pretty much directed me to what I had read. But I'm just
Okay.
asking, basically, is this for the next year or is this long term or?
Long term.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by that. That's a lot on that one person, but I have more to.
Well, I gotta go back to the assessment. I think it does call out for public works director eventually. But
Right.
it talked about transitional, so how do I define long term? I have to go back to the study and see. I think it's over the next 3 to 4 years, though, is this person's responsibility that I just outlined.
Okay.
I'd have to go
Thank
back,
you.
reread or go back and verify the assessment. I'll let you know what it says again.
For some reason, I was thinking it was more temporary than long term. But that's okay, because I
Well,
definitely can't
it's a
recall.
transitional for the public works piece. It's the hire before public works director eventually.
Okay.
I'll let Amy finish, but I got a lot more questions.
Okay. Employee pay and benefits. This considers the continuation of a performance coaching system that we began last year. I know when we met last time, we talked about, we were holding out a little bit on what to do for our performance improvement program. We have looked at the consumer price index or inflation, and it does look like inflation is going up a bit, potentially because of gasoline prices, but the CPI is showing about a 2.5%, 2.7% inflationary growth occurring. So we are recommending the 5% pay increase for employees in this budget. Also, as we discussed previously, we did get the renewal. There is no increase in our health insurance premiums, so that was great news. And of course, as we talked last time, we've got included the increase associated with the retirement system contribution. Moving on to that capital projects fund. One thing I do want to mention here, because our capital program is in transition, right? As we talked before, it used to be all these little small type of, well, not really small, but good sized operating items we used to have in this capital budget. And now it's sort of grown up and it's become a lot of these long-term.
We lost you there, Amy.
We lost you, Amy.
Yeah.
Amy, you went down.
Am I back?
Yep.
Yeah.
You bet.
Okay, good. For some reason, Zoom randomly mutes. I don't know why it does this to me. Okay, where did I cut out? I'm sorry. Back to, okay, well, we'll go back. Go
I
back
would
to
just start that slide over, the one you're working on, the capital
Okay.
project.
Capital Projects Fund. So what I want to talk about here a little bit is that, because we're getting to the point where this fund is transitioning from, it used to be large capital items, like a snowplow or buying a new pickup truck, things that we got done in 1 year, right? But now it's transitioned into these very large projects, which typically run over multiple years. And so there's two ways to budget funds in North Carolina. Okay. One is with the annual budget ordinance. And so that's typically how we've adopted most of our budget, with an annual budget ordinance. You approve the funds, they're good for July 1 to June 30th. And then that budget expires and we start all over again. And that works for the general fund. That is the way you should be appropriating funds for your general fund. On occasion, we have used what's called a capital project ordinance. Okay, we used that for the Granite Falls Boulevard project is a good example, where you appropriated funds for the Granite Falls Boulevard project, and those funds stayed authorized until the project was done. Those funds were good for more than 1 year. Okay, the budget time frame was more than 1 year. So what I would like to propose that we do for this capital projects fund, starting this year, and you see this a lot in larger units, is that the entire capital projects fund would be budgeted using a capital project ordinance. What that means is whatever you appropriate money for this year in this fund only, those funds would not expire on June 30th. This is really important, for example, for the Main Street Vision Plan, that $9.3 million project. So that we don't have to keep coming back to you at the end of the 1 year cycle to reappropriate funds, we would do this in a capital project ordinance that would appropriate it for the life of the project. Okay, and this may make more sense as we get closer to the public hearing. What I can do is provide you with I'll provide you with the actual ordinances that I'm talking about. But wanted to go ahead and plant that seed and give you opportunity to ask questions now or to think about it if you have questions later. So moving into the fund itself, as we've talked several times now, Main Street Vision Plan is a huge portion of this particular fund. We're talking about the 9.3 million here. 6.1 has to do with that federal grant, and then additional 3.25 for the Walbrook associated pieces. The second big project in this fund is the Public Works facility. This is 1.6 million total. 1.5 in this budget is anticipated to be debt financed. Then moving on, capital program, other big items in the capital program in this next year, the Cobblestone Community Center and the Economic Development Agreement obligations. Some engineering for Rogers Road and Granite Falls Boulevard and the additional segments. And then also some engineering for parks, as well as future land acquisition for future parks. So that's the 2-cent tour, the very broad overview. So at this point, I think we open for questions. We open for discussion if there were items perhaps that you're aware of or things that have come about that we did not include in the budget or want to ensure that we do or want to see if they are in there and I just didn't talk about them tonight. So open the floor.
So I want to go back to the assistant town manager position and the public works portion being under that. And I don't know if that's just Kelly needs to come back with a date on that. But to me, that feels like a lot to house under the assistant town manager. So I'm just curious as to how that's going to work out because communications is another big bucket as well as far and managing those projects. So I know that's important. Another thing that I feel like is a lot skinny is our economic development efforts. When I look at there being only one person in that arena, when we're talking about developing Rolesville, I know we have 2 big projects coming, but we have to have an effort on this continually. And so we've got to start looking at evening out some of these dollars so that we're supporting economic development in on a larger scale. I think that's important. And then the recreation superintendent position, I'm questioning, because if you're taking public works and putting it under the assistant town manager, that pulls away some of the duties that public works is having to manage now. I mean, Parks and Rec is having to manage now. So that leaves a big question mark over my forehead on that.
I'm referring to the organizational assessment. I pulled it out of my drawer here. Year one hires for the assessment were human resource director, assistant town manager, planner one. And we didn't quite get to the assistant town manager yet because we prioritized the human resource director. Year 2 to 3, program coordinator, which is the rec superintendent, and the public works director.
Wait a
Year
minute.
3 to
Can
go ahead.
you repeat that? I got confused because you said program coordinator, and then what you said?
Which is the rec, which we're calling a recreation superintendent.
Yeah, those are two different positions.
I understand.
Okay.
And if you look at the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, it calls out for this position as the priority. It does not call it out in the organizational assessment. So I'm making the call to recommend that position as of right now. The assistant town manager, described in the organizational assessment, says it will direct report responsibilities for specific town functions. The position will be responsible for providing oversight of the Public Works Department in order to free up the time and capacity for the Parks and Recreation, who currently provides functional oversight. The assistant town manager would also be responsible for the town management to management town communication services provided under this contract, which we had contractual. The current communications effort in town talks about the communications effort. The portfolio responsibility of the assistant town manager is expected to increase with the expansion of engineering services provided through Public Works and the coordination of Parks and Recreation services supporting Public Works services. So it talks about, and it contemplates there will be a transitional period, but it does call out for a Public Works director position.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think we've said that over and over.
Yep.
I don't know why we're.
Well, here's the one of the dilemmas a little bit is capacity of placement of positions. Once we put on the planner one position, the human resources director, and the assistant town manager, we are at capacity in town hall as far as office space. So that's one of the dilemmas right now facing us as we add additional people. What we do over the recreation side with an additional person will have to be an additional cubicle over there. So I kind of think that we're kind of in a place where we don't have a whole lot of room for new personnel for a little period of time, because we just don't have any capacity here within our current functions or our building. And so as I think about the next 2 to 3 years, I'm not certain where we would put additional people at this point. So I'm just giving you my perspective as I look out where we are today.
And then I hear you. I thank you for breaking that down, Kelly. Is there opportunity for virtual? I know a lot of people are, having to move to virtual with COVID, thinking about that. A lot of folks are going virtual. So I don't know if that's a consideration when you think about staffing and space, if any of those positions are conducive for that.
Good point, and I've not thought through that.
So yeah, I want us to think through that because I really want us to get what we really need. And I'm struggling on a couple of these positions, like the rec one. If you're moving like I already said, if you're moving the responsibility of public works to an assistant town manager, I don't see the need for a recreation superintendent unless I'm not fully understanding the role.
Okay. We'll provide more information between now and soon on that position. Make sure we understand it.
And I think on my end of what I understand of it, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I think, and this is just my take on that, the recreation superintendent. JG is your director right now and would be in charge of like long-term, larger projects. And I can't name any of that right now, but I mean, you know, if we did park acquisition, if we're doing stuff with the farm, phasing on that, everything else like that, the larger projects. Whereas I would see the recreation superintendent dealing with the day-to-day, dealing with, you have Garrett right now with Parks and Rec, dealing with everything that he has to deal with, you know, from like, we need uniforms or we need this, or there's something wrong with this, and dealing with the programming side, saying, you know, we need a place to deal with this programming. We need additional space for this and that. And we need, you know, advertising for this and that. It's kind of like the smaller stuff, the day-to-day stuff. I would see the recreation superintendent taking care of the day-to-day problems and not dealing with the long-term projects. That's how I took it.
I take it like you're saying JG needs an assistant. I'm sorry. This is Michelle. I said, to me, it sounds like you're saying JG's role needs an assistant.
I would say, yeah, for the day-to-days. And I think because of what we're getting into with the farm, with the everything else, Parks and Rec wise, you know, Millbridge, everything else coming up. I feel like it's, you know, just getting all that day-to-day stuff out of the way would greatly help him with that.
Okay, so then Mike goes back to my question again about what is that role, which was explained. But, and I know there are 2 people down in Parks and Rec right now, right? Is it 2?
I think they have 2.
Well,
yeah, they have 2. They have 1 programming and 1 Parks and Rec.
So with that said, when you fill those positions up, I mean, I don't know, somebody, whichever kind of way, if it can be set up where those positions that are going to be refilled or someone's coming back in a couple of weeks after their time off, to fill those positions with those duties versus taking away from public works or adding on to assistant town manager. But I say this not knowing what you all do, Kelly, so keep that in mind. I have a general idea of what you do, and I'm sure you thought this through, but I really do feel like that role for, what is it, the superintendent or whatever it was called, I'm just trying to see, can those duties right now go to staff that's already there? And I know they're overworked, and I know you're down some people, but it just seems like a lot of shuffling, and somebody's gonna have to take the brunt of it anyway.
Yeah, and that's why I say, like I said, I'm just trying, like, it's just like the, you know, you're working on a giant project, and everybody goes, you know, well, we need to go find funding for this, or we need to get this in by this date and everything else, and it's a 5-year project, and we have somebody call them up and say, hey, one of my kids is missing a jersey. Like that's what I mean. Like it's 2 different worlds that we're trying to break up. I feel like with that superintendent would help out with the smaller stuff you're having issues with, whereas the director would deal with the larger projects on the Parks and Rec side.
I believe you're correct on that. Don't get me wrong, but I just think, is that the highest need for the town right now versus an assistant town manager who's doing other things besides, you know, second chore duties for the director? Does that make sense? I'm not trying to be callous about it, but that's what I'm saying. Which one is more? I think both roles are very important, but I'm trying to figure out, are we sacrificing moving the town forward with an assistant town manager for an assistant to the Park and Rec director?
Let me just throw something out here. It might help you conceptualize that a little bit differently. Maybe recreation superintendent isn't the title that's giving the right connotation. I would
Yeah.
think of
It's
it
not-
maybe,
Amy, I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah,
off, but it's not the title. I'm not
yeah,
stuck
no,
on the
no,
title.
but let me,
But-
I understand, but let me describe it another way that may help you understand the duties.
Mhm.
I think it's intended to be like another program coordinator, but like a senior program coordinator or a lead program coordinator, somebody who gives a little bit more of a mentoring type of role to the other programming coordinators.
I'm just struggling with the layering. And the reason I say that, coming out of the corporate world, and I know our mayor is very used to this, we have a lot of working managers. You might have a director title, but you're working. And so when you just described that, Amy, that feels more like a project manager, but layering it and having an assist, because this almost feels like an assistant Parks and Rec director to me, the way it's described in what I'm reading. And the
Exactly.
layering is bothersome to me. And I don't see that we have a need, especially when the assessment recommended a program coordinator. So maybe you do have a senior program coordinator, someone with a little more experience that you can train up in that way. But this just feels like layering of leadership, and that I just don't think we're there yet.
At one time, we talked about having a project manager,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that would handle the big projects, regardless of what department it fell under.
Right.
And building on what Michelle and Sheila says, maybe we need to rethink that and hire a project manager. But at the same time, I'm not on the front line. The closest anybody, in my opinion, right now on the front line, Paul has a tight relationship with Parks and Rec because he's so involved with that. Sheila has been closer to Michael than anybody, and she is very dedicated and mindful of the need for economic development. As I sit here as a member of a board, and I've sat, as you know, on many boards and chaired quite a few, I am at the mercy of Kelly telling us, because he's there every day, what we need, the priority of it, and how we should move forward. So I think Kelly needs to take into consideration our concerns that have been voiced here and come back with some answers. I don't think you can answer them all tonight, Kelly. But I understand the concerns that these ladies have.
And if I may, to address that, and Michelle, Michelle, we are recommending an assistant town manager. I heard you say you're trying to weigh which one, but
No, I know we are.
the assistant town manager is in there, and it will serve as a project manager on items such as helping with the Main Street program, helping with our next level facility planning that we need, and then overseeing Public Works Department as we transition ultimately to a Public Works Director position ultimately. But I don't know if we need that, when we need that. It calls it for the next 2 to 3 years out. And again, I'm not certain when that will be. We may end up needing to take over, bring in-house some engineering and such also, even though this organizational assessment doesn't call that out for years 6 to 10. So it is a little bit fluid, granted. And I hear what you're saying about the recreation superintendent position, and I will create more information, listen to you further, talk to staff, and be able to respond very soon on it.
Okay, Kelly,
just
just saying,
wanted-
that I know that there's an assistant town manager in the works. I wasn't saying that there wasn't. I just felt like it was almost as if we were trying to me personally, just my opinion, that we're weighing we need the assistant town manager, we need the superintendent. I know it's gonna cost money for both. But the overlapping to me, it seems like the duties are being pushed off to an assistant town manager. And it just didn't, I'm just trying to understand how that works. I mean, are you hiring it seems like we're hiring an assistant town manager for many things outside of the Parks and Rec. I get that part, but I just think that the Parks and Rec is sort of one of the
Right.
main reasons.
I
why we're doing
think
it.
Sheila's saying that same reason, same purpose, same thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I hit-
And again, I know y'all do a lot, Kelly, so I'm not trying to come in here and just bust up the
it's
whole thing.
okay.
That's
It's all right.
to us. I get it, but I'm just trying to understand it as if I didn't know what was going on right now, as if this is all being made public, which it probably is. And people are asking questions, well, why are you doing that? So I'm just trying to understand it myself so that,
That's right.
just so I would have better understanding of it.
Can I clarify one thing on engineering? You mentioned engineering. Where
Mhm.
is that under the assistant town manager, or is that contracted out? Are we hiring an engineer? Can you clarify that piece?
No, engineering will not have, it'll be contracted out, continuing for a period of time, and it will not be part of the.
Okay,
assistant
I
town
thought I heard you mention that. Okay, I was about to say, well, that's a lot. Okay.
No.
thank-
Okay, I would like to speak to Amy's suggestion, which you planted the seed in regard to funds for capital projects, appropriation of funds for capital projects. Amy, to me, that's just good common sense. If we appropriate the funds now, they should not expire with the budget. If we set the funds aside and it takes 3 years, we shouldn't have to approve it every budget for the next 3 years, or if it takes 5 years. If the money has been appropriated and approved by our board and the money is sitting there, then we've already approved it to be spent. But, it's going to take time. And, some projects finish on times, some do not. So I like your idea and I will support that.
And Amy, you said you're going to get us a specific list of everything that's going to be in that fund, correct?
Right, so that again is on page 62, 63. That's that capital project fund. So it's all of these big projects like the Main Street Vision Plan, like purchasing future parkland, the Cobblestone Community Center. What else is in there? The Redford Place Park lights. Now that one, I do expect it would be done in a year, but it's just easier if you do the whole fund as a capital project ordinance.
Gotcha. I agree. That's a good thought process.
Okay, all right. And I know that Sheila and Michelle made their point with the assistant town manager and the recreation superintendent. But I just want to say that I echo their concerns because to me as well, haven't spoken up yet, but to me as well, it just seemed like one thing is being shuffled around to somebody else when it seems like maybe in Parks and Rec, once the people, as Michelle said, the employees come back and that work is divided up a little bit more, then that would take some pressure off of JG. And if the work is being done now with one person and 2 more are out, is there a need for that other position if that work is being done? Again, as Jackie and other ones have said, that I'm not there. I'm looking at it 30,000 feet above. So just wanted to echo my 2 cents on that. So I look forward to hearing what's next on it.
I do want to say we are, according to all the reports we've had so far, we are understaffed compared to other municipalities around us. Using as an example, that it seems that we're understaffed in Parks and Rec department.
And whether it's now or later, and Paul's right, that's what the Recreation Comprehensive Master Plan says. But when we build a facility, there will be additional staffing required at Cobblestone. So that may be the later part, but And Paul is right that comparatively, the plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan does call out for additional staffing. But let me go back, and I've heard what you've said, and we'll put together some information between now and very soon.
And Kelly, I don't disagree with needing to be more people to do the work. I'm
Right.
concerned about stacking the leadership of the work. I like flatter organizations wherever we can have them, because it creates bureaucracy. But anyway, that's just my thought. And like everyone else said, I'm not there, and I know that we're growing. I just want us to do the right stuff.
Right.
I think I understand what is being said on the rec side, but I'm not sure I understand, Sheila or Michelle, what's being said on the public works. Are you saying that on the public works side, it needs to be a director there instead of reporting to the assistant manager? What was it
I'm not
on
saying
that? And what was on that side you had concerns with? I'm not sure I followed that side of it.
I'm not saying that, Ronnie. I'm just saying that you have, I mean, eventually when I think something was said a year or two ago, there really isn't enough work to hire that person, right? To fill that position at that moment, at that time. So I don't have any, can I say this? I think with the assistant town manager coming in and being in charge of public works, temporarily, that's not a problem. I'm just saying that he's coming in and he's taking over that role, which I really feel that it should be two separate people handling that role in the first place, not necessarily your Parks and Rec person and your public works person being one. So an assistant town manager coming in, I can see him taking or her taking on that role. But I'm just going into the Parks and Rec part. I'm like, let's just call it what it is. Your Parks and Rec director probably needs an assistant. So you're bringing a town manager and you're giving him those duties too. So now he's doing that assistant role to your Parks and Rec director. He's fulfilling his role as a public works pseudo director. And is it necessary to put those tasks on that title of an assistant town manager versus, I don't know, someone said a project manager or somebody else to fill another, whatever the title was that Amy gave? Would it be more efficient to put that position out there for somebody else to fulfill versus putting that on your assistant town manager? Does that make sense?
I see what I would see is, so like everything related to Parks and Rec that's a project would stay with Parks and Rec as a project with the director.
No,
I would
wait,
see
I didn't say
going,
not. No, I didn't say not to do that.
Yeah, right.
So
right.
I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying why. I was just trying to understand. I'm not saying don't do it or to do it.
Right.
You're bringing in an town manager to take on those roles, but you're basically the role that he would be taking on is something that I would see an assistant doing for Parks and Rec, not the town, not the assistant town. All these titles are throwing me off. Not the assistant town manager doing this here for Parks and Rec, because it's going to be ongoing and it's not going to get any lighter. So there's going to come a time where that assistant town manager is going to be overwhelmed with Parks and Rec. So why not fulfill the positions within Parks and Rec and leave it at that versus pushing that over to an assistant town manager who's going to be doing other things besides Parks and Rec and Public Works, because he will be acting as town manager when Kelly's not around. And I'm sure there's a ton of other duties that he'll be doing. Parks and Rec is huge. And I get they're always saying they're overworked, but I haven't met a community yet that doesn't say the same thing about their Parks and Rec. They all are overworked, but I just don't think you should put that on your assistant town manager. Yes, that person can help, but ultimately put that in a position officially for Parks and Rec. Does that make sense? I'm not sure that it does, but again, I'm not saying remove anything from Parks and Rec, but I think by putting it on the assistant town manager, you are removing it from Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I mean, I see the assistant town manager as more of a project manager, and you move everything, Main Street vision, cobblestone, this, that, everything else to them, and you leave the Parks and Rec projects to the Parks and Rec division.
Right, so if you're giving it to the assistant town manager when he comes in, or she, I have to stop saying he,
Mhm.
when you're putting that over to that person, you're already removing it from Parks and Rec.
No, well, I wouldn't
So
move
leave
that.
it up
I
there
wouldn't move it.
to-
Yeah, I wouldn't move anything to them. They would get Main Street part, or they get Main Street Vision. They would get cobblestone. They would get this, that. But if it's Parks and Rec related or program related, it would stay on the Parks and Rec side. It would.
So I
you'd
think we're
split this.
saying the same thing here.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
And let me
But
just
again, we
clarify.
don't,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Michelle.
no, I'm finished. I'm done.
And let me just clarify, because I heard the mayor ask for clarification from both of us. I don't have any issues with Public Works being housed under the assistant town manager temporarily based on the assessment. Kelly mentioned that earlier. And I think obviously we're anticipating that things are going to grow and change, but I don't know that we're in a position to jump to some of these positions before we actually grow. So I don't have a problem with it being under the assistant town manager based on the assessment. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, and I agree with that one too. I mean, once you get your stormwater stormwater development and all that stuff and everything else, then you're going to get into your Public Works big time, and you're going to need people there.
Right.
So yeah, that's right.
Right.
So
And
that side, we all agree, it looks pretty good then on the Public Works side, and the town, I guess the system manager side, that looks pretty good. Is that what I'm hearing? So if, I guess to give Kelly some thought going back, and we'll move on after this. Looks like the layer in the rec department with the superintendent reporting. I guess the director has one report, which is a superintendent. And that layer looks like it's, I think is what's being in question. So if you don't use that position there and you don't need it in Public Works, then where would you put that position?
I personally think there needs to be more focus on project management, and that position could stay in Parks and Rec, but I think it needs to be more of a project manager, a working person that's working on those projects. And then if there's other projects that need assistance, but I think that skill set of project management is needed versus a superintendent role, because to me, the director is going to be freed up quite a bit when you take off that Public Works thing. We know that. So if there's a need, it sounds like project management may be a need in what Paul shared.
Okay, fair enough. Well, give that some thought, Kelly. And I know we're not going to solve, everything tonight, but give that some thought. We got a few more weeks to hammer this out.
Yep.
All right, let's move on.
Let me ask a question on additional items, if you don't mind.
Sure.
You do have a comprehensive street plan that you're going to be making some repairs and such. There was one section of a sidewalk that's not been completed that was brought to your attention recently. That is not funded in this budget. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. I don't know if you want to consider that.
Well, is it any movement at all in that building being put there? I know it was some mighty strong talk at one time about it, and then no talk in the last year or so. Jackie, do you know if there's any more talk about putting that building on where he's talking about is the corner of Granite Falls and Rogers Road there?
I have heard no talk at all on anything moving forward there.
So across from the credit union?
Yeah,
No.
it's actually catty corner.
Yeah, it's the other corner.
By Domino. I'm just trying to figure out what we're.
Right.
Yeah,
From Domino's
yeah.
up to Granite Falls Boulevard.
yeah, where I thought we had a convenience store. You're talking about the lot where the town has already put the retainage pond on it.
Yes.
At this time, we do not have a client. So I'm not sure. I'm talking to several people, but we have nothing under contract at this time.
Two thoughts. The problem with doing it in advance is you don't know where the curb cut's gonna be on any future development.
Right.
But secondly, if it doesn't have any activity, there is a well-worn path there. You could go out in advance and build a sidewalk and then get reimbursed when the development comes in, if that's of interest. So,
And back to
but
the
you would
curb
have a section that would probably be affected when a development would come in eventually.
Yeah, because of the stoplight there, you're not going to get a curb cut there, but you have a shared curb cut with the.
That's right. You're right. You're right, Jackie.
Down the street where you pull into Domino's Pizza down there, that's going to be a shared curb cut there.
You're right. So that eliminates that one problem. You're right.
But again, you don't know the use yet. I just don't see spending the money yet.
Is there another remedy like gravel?
I walked that, on Saturday, and it's hard as a rock and it's fine. But sure, I mean, you could put gravel, but I'd rather see you leave it alone.
So was the concern safety? I don't remember, Kelly. You have to refresh my memory on that.
It's pretty level. I didn't see any problems when I walked it.
I think it's your connectivity from, that shopping area down to that light, because we've got that whole intersection's done now down there, but you have no way from that intersection down to the shopping area.
Down to what shopping area? I'm lost.
Like the post office, Domino's, all that stuff down through there.
So coming across Granite Falls
To the
Boulevard.
light at Granite Falls.
Yeah, you come across, you go at SecU, go across the street to the new section of Granite Falls, and then start your way down to Domino's. It's that part from that intersection down to Domino's. Yeah, there's nothing.
It's
through
hard earth there. I
Right.
walked that.
Yep.
I got.
Okay.
Any-
If you want a
any,
price on it, we could get a price, or if you just want to let it lie, we let it lie.
I know, Kelly, one time we had a sidewalk plan or gap closing plan, plan for gaps, sidewalk gaps. And that may have been before your time. I know probably some on the board remember, Sheila may remember having a plan to try to budget to close up these gaps. And, maybe we need to think of it from that perspective. Is that the most important one? For example, we hear Bojangles a lot. I don't know. And I'm not even sure if you're familiar what we're talking about there, Kelly.
No, I don't think I've never seen a prioritized plan. Just off the top, everything else on Main Street's gonna be addressed here in the next year and a half, all the way up past Bojangles and such. So every bit of Main Street will have sidewalk in about a year and a half, 2 years. So that probably is one of the more, both sides of Rogers Road are lacking sidewalk. That one does make the connection and completes that whole kind of quadrant. But other than that, I have not seen any other prioritization.
But there's nothing on the
Why did
corner.
you say?
Is there something on that corner that they would be walking to?
No, it's just a loop. It's a well-worn track. I think people are walking a loop from back behind the shopping center, that those townhomes and such. They're probably now walking a kind of a loop along. I see a lot of people walking Rogers Road and then going down Granite Falls Boulevard back into the townhomes. And back
Oh,
again. So I think
okay,
it's
I got
a walking loop, essentially.
The walking path. I got you.
Yeah.
And then one other clarification on Rogers Road, is that on the docket to be expanded by DOT?
It's
Can you repeat
that
that again,
project-
Sheila? It broke.
I was just
I didn't hear
asking,
Sheila's question.
is Rogers Road on the docket to be expanded by DOT?
Okay.
So we are on, the town is supposed to expand at the Willoughby entrance. We have fee in lieu that was given to us by Willoughby. due to time constraints, I did not get that design this year, so that project was pushed up and not completed this year, but there is money to engineer and complete the intersection and hopefully try to get some widening of Rogers Road, but it definitely, the intersection of Willoughby needs to be completed because that has been a commitment of ours to that development.
Okay.
All right, people, let's move on.
Right, so one more slide. If we're done with any additional items, obviously, if you come up with anything in the meantime, feel free to contact town manager. But as Kelly mentioned, next date is your next meeting, May 4th is a public hearing, and then you are free to adopt anytime from the evening of May 4th, but no later than July the 1st.
It'll be July.
Okay, done with the budget for now?
I think we're good. Thank you. Thank you, Amy, for presenting that.
It was beautiful.
And again, thank you to Amy and everybody for their efforts putting this together. I think it's really a good piece of work this year, so thank you. And good questions, everybody. I do think that's very important that you have those good questions, and it may take me a little past a week to get your answers because I do have some time off early next week, but I'll get working on them. So the next item is the Parks and Recreation Bond Initiative. In my memo, I put a brief summary that at April 7th meeting, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board did meet. They brought in 2 groups to listen to and talk through. One was a community who had recently gone through an initiative to learn about their efforts. And then the other one was from the financial advisors that we use on how a ballot question, how much it would cost to potentially fund projects. And as they work through those presentations and trying to reach a decision on whether they thought there was enough time left to establish a November ballot, it is their recommendations not to proceed this year. Part of it is because of the effort, the short timeline, and we still don't have a couple of important pieces of information, including what is going to be the costs associated with the farm project, which is certainly their project that they're most interested in pursuing. They also talked about the cobblestone project as being one of the projects that would be part of an initiative. And just so that you know, we are now going out and seeking an architect to start working on with us and you on the feasibility of what we really want in that building. We need to kind of follow through on our economic development agreement where we need to put that building up and operating in the next 2 to 3 years. So we need to get going on that. So they spent some time, they decided now is not the time. They want to spend the next few months going out into the community and kind of educating, gauging, talking to the community about those projects, about the costs associated with them, so that they can give you some advice on what they think would be the projects that might be of interest to them to promote or provide you and ask to set for a ballot. And so they would like to start that process up this summer. They're going to ask you to allow staff and themselves to create some time this summer to go out in the community and meet with groups, provide information on the projects so that they can gather more information and learn more. So they'll be asking you on that. And I think it's proper for you to consider that ask on May 4th so that they can then, if you're interested in allowing resources and time be spent on that effort, you will let them do that with staff support. But they're looking at possibly a spring election cycle. Right now, we don't know exactly when that election is going to be. It typically is in March. But as we know, they've been talking about possibly moving that election cycle back to May. So one way or the other will be that timeline. In order to hit a March ballot, they being you, would have to have a ballot approved by November. So their work would start very soon and come back around probably by no later than July or August with some of the recommendations to you on what they would think would be possible ballot initiatives and questions for those projects. So that's really the update. Paul was there for the meeting. Amy participated. JG certainly was there, but I didn't have him come to this meeting. But if there's any questions on that at this point.
You mentioned they a lot. Who's heading this up, I guess? Who's the
Parks and Recreation Advisory Board.
So the board itself is the one that's in charge of this?
They're the ones expressing interest to provide you recommendations.
Okay.
Okay, anything else further on that at all?
I think it's smart, the process they're thinking through though. I think that's smart.
Yeah, I would say, just knowing how other towns it does it, they put a lot of thought on when they put it on the ballot, and
Yeah.
they put a lot of politicking in before it goes on the ballot. They will caution us, the ones that have done it before and has experience with it, that has been successful and failed, that you do not want it on the ballot unless you're very confident that it's going to pass, because you don't want to put it on there and fail. That's not a good thing to do, and then you may not never get it if you do it that way. So I don't know how you get that confidence, Kelly, but we really need to make sure we're pretty confident that it is what the town wants. And if you notice, most of these bonds is not even close. When they hit the ballot, if you look at any of them that's been on the ballots in the last 5-6 years, they pass 70-80% of the votes. So they're not even close. So, you can tell they're putting a lot of work in those things when they put it on the ballot. It's just not something you stick on there and hope it passes, in other words.
A lot of marketing.
And I suspect what they probably will want to do by like August is come back and talk to you and get some of that dose of political reality a little bit too, right? Because I think they're going to go out and really listen to the community and learn, but ultimately it's your responsibility to set the ballot. So they may want to come back and spend some time with you on what they're hearing, listening to you, sharing information before they come back with a specific recommendation. I think that would be advisable. Okay, well, look for a little bit. It might be even on consent agenda. May 4th is a pretty busy agenda, but I've asked for them to kind of create a little bit of a working program, what they might be doing over the next 2 to 3 months, just so you get a sense of it. And again, you understand. So when they get started, essentially, it doesn't mean you affirm the initiative. It means you affirm them and staff putting some time on this to go learn and listen to the community. Okay.
Yeah, but I do want to make sure the staff is involved in this. I know it's our responsibility to put on the ballot. It sounds like they are the ones that are kind of, making it work. But let's make sure we do our homework from a staff support. In other words, the staff is talking to other staffs in Make County that has been successful and know what it takes to be successful. That we're just not you know, we're not, in other words, if we do it, we want to do it to do it right, you know.
That's right. That's right. And JG has a lot of good information. I've had some success in other places, but you're right. You are right, Mayor. When you set the ballot, you better know the answer pretty well. So, yep. Okay. The next one, fire unification
Yeah.
efforts.
Yeah, Kelly, before we move in that, we'll be going an hour and a half. Let's take a 5-minute recess, if you would. I got 8:28 here. So let's reconvene at let's say, can everybody be back at 8:35? Okay.
That's
All right.
fine.
So we'll take a break and we'll try to get started back at 8:35 then. Thanks.
Proposal that was developed primarily by myself. And then I had drafting assistance with the fire chief and the Wake County Fire Services Director. And in this proposal, this is essentially the one-page paper that will start the basis of an agreement. And the purpose is to get started now with a small working group to work and build out on this proposal all the various elements that we want in an agreement. I see the agreement trying to be completed in the next 2 to 3 months. And it will include a date when unification will take place. It will include how between now, by the time the agreement is done, and to the unification date, the steps or what needs to be completed to that point when we officially have a unification. So in this proposal, you see the framework of an agreement. It includes similar things such as we're going to have a continuation of similar service when the unification starts. There will be a town hiring a full-time fire chief at some point. Transition dates, if we have them, throughout the agreement up to unification. Acknowledgement and understanding of what the fire department has now, like personnel costs, assets, organizational responsibilities. One of the key items is obviously getting into, hopefully in this agreement, some acknowledgement that there will be a future fire station or stations in the near future and how that effort will occur. And then obviously in agreement, we need to address what the role of the rural fire department board is going to be post unification. So last week, the mayor attended the fire department meeting, and they have agreed to have their fire chief, a full-time firefighter, a volunteer, and I believe 2 board members participate in this effort. It's my recommendation for a town that the manager, the finance director, and up to 2 commissioners and or the mayor participate in this effort. And in Wake County is going to be equally involved. They're very interested in being involved, and they only want one person. That's the fire services director, Terrell Alford. Greg Grayson, the consultant, is ready to go. If you're ready to go tomorrow, I will start trying to find the time to convene this body, this group, and start working on this effort. So I just want to make sure that we're ready and get going. And right now it has been, out of this group working on it, it's been Kelly, Amy, Mayor Curran, Commissioner Wilson, Commissioner Sneed have, as you know, been working on this for about the last 9 months through the study, initial analysis, and such like that.
I was a part of that as well.
And so tonight, I just want to see where you want to go. I think Jackie has a secondary question after we have this discussion about the role of the town board in the interim on the rural fire department board. So is everybody ready to go?
I have a couple questions. On the, Amy mentioned during her update about $10,000 for the fire department. Is that for this?
Yes.
Okay. And then did we get the financial statements that we were supposed to get? Because maybe I missed them in the packet and I could have missed them very easily.
Amy, do you want to answer that, what we got?
So I do get, for the last several years, I do get the financial statements, which are similar, to the financial statements that you all get for the town. It's not like a budget to actual kind of thing like we have in our budget book, right? It's financial statements, which are typically used, or in the accounting world. There's a lot of accounting pieces to it. I am in the process of obtaining budgets, historical budgets, and then trying to convert some of those financial statements into actuals, so that I can show you all something very similar to like what we have in our budget document, where you could see historical budgets and historical actual expenditures. Make it a little bit more digestible.
But hang on a minute, you're doing that?
What?
Why would you do that versus them hiring someone to do that? That doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I'm doing it in the sense that to help provide you with good information as you go through this process.
And us, we need to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And also Lily is retiring. Been keeping the books and everything. She is retiring there. So that's another issue we'll get into later.
Funny that you call it an issue, Jackie.
Well, I don't mean an issue, but obviously they've got to replace her with somebody because this interim period is I won't say iffy, but I'll feel better about it once we establish dates on where certain things are going to take place. And I don't know who's going to be keeping the books in the interim.
When is she leaving,
They've
Jackie?
hired somebody, Jackie.
They have?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then I'll stand down on that. I am of the opinion that she is going to retire at the end of this month.
She's gone.
Okay.
She has left, and I think the new person has started, I believe, is what I remember Rodney saying.
Okay. I see Ronnie attended last week's meeting in place of me because I had a meeting that I was already obligated to.
They were both their last meeting, so I really didn't get a sense on. I think they're in transition. I think one's helping the other one learn the what to do right now. But they both.
Who is the new? I'm
both
sorry.
their last meeting.
I'm sorry about that, Ronnie. Who is the new person? Do you know? No.
I don't.
Okay.
Didn't know her.
Okay.
I heard the
Okay.
name, but I didn't write it down. I don't recall.
Kelly, is it a good time for me now to talk about the board?
Let me just re-ask. So is
Okay.
everybody good with Mayor Curran, Wilson, and Sneed participating with Arnold and Stevens on this and get going?
I'd love to continue.
That would be fine with me because I know I was on there, worked with the consultants, and prior to that, like over a year or two ago. But I just want to know that information as soon as you all know it, because I still get a lot of phone calls about it.
Yeah, we're going to need to keep it transparent, Kelly. So
Very, yeah.
Okay, we'll get started and we'll keep you.
now, how many did they put on there? Did they put 5 on there too, or what?
I know they got the fire chief, firefighter, volunteer, 2 board members, The only one I'm uncertain, I gotta go back to my notes, is if they put the assistant fire chief on there or not. I can't recall.
I know they was trying to get down to 5.
I think that would be 5.
And
So
I think that, I think that's bulky. I don't think you need a volunteer only.
Yeah, you do.
I think you do.
I think you
I
do
think
as
you do.
well.
All right,
We
When
need
you start
to
eliminating
have,
groups, that's a problem.
everybody's gonna be affected by this in the room, I
okay,
think.
okay.
And you know what, Jackie, I'm just gonna ask you this because I don't know what it is with the volunteers, because you have mentioned this before, like it's not about the volunteers. That is a very, very important part of the firehouse. And by all means, even though I know we just said we're gonna keep them, they should always be represented.
Well, I understand that, but at the same time, I've been told that when we merge, we will not have volunteers.
Well, we don't know that.
yet.
I didn't
We don't know that yet?
think that was
No.
confirmed.
Okay.
Some towns
all right,
do have some.
Okay.
That's gonna be part of the discussion.
Okay, because I think the League of Municipalities said that they had to be insured if they are part of it. But again, we'll get into that later, okay? And I don't know what Wake Forest did, okay? But what I wanted to make the board aware of was when Joel Keefe resigned last month, the board met later and asked me to take his place on the board. I told him I could not do that without discussing it with this board and with our town attorney. And I called Kelly in discussion with him, and I called Dave, and Dave informed me that there's legislature pending that prohibits an elected official to be a member of a board, like a, what is it, a 501c3 or a nonprofit board, and vote on matters that would affect, that has effect on the town board or the board that he is serving on. Dave, can you give us some clarification on that? Again, did I state that correctly?
So that's a correct description of the pending bill. However, without the bill, it would generally have always been the guidance of the town attorney that you not vote on matters where you serve on the board of some third party, and they are now coming to the town looking for cash grants or support. That would be a matter where you would typically step aside and not take part in that vote as a matter of good practice. And while normally a board member is required to vote on matters, that is an area where I think many towns have advised their board members they would not want to vote in that case because it is such a close call as to whether that is a personal benefit if they were to vote on that matter. The bill that is pending seeks to provide some clarity on the point. That is, in case you were wondering, yes, that would be a personal benefit, and no, you may not choose to vote on those matters, and to do so would be a conflict of interest and leave you open to criminal liability. There is a carve out, however, for that bill for small towns. So if your population is under 10,000, there would not be that per se criminal exclusion. Now, it doesn't say if you're under 10,000, do whatever you want. It just says that the firm black letter law would not apply. And again, that bill hasn't passed yet. So
But if
we're back to what would be our guidance and what would be our practice. If you serve on the board of the fire department or the board of a local nonprofit or the board of the Chamber of Commerce, for example, generally you would choose not to vote on matters relating to a grant of funds or to other things that relate to that corporation.
Okay.
So you certainly can serve. question is whether you would want to.
Okay. I discussed this with Kelly in detail, and we got some options here. One, as me just staying as a liaison and reporting back to this board. All right. Then we also talked about me being what is it? A member in what's the term, Kelly, when you don't have a vote on anything? Officiate. Now I can't think.
I think a liaison is probably the right word.
Okay. All right. But regardless of who goes on that board, if it goes that way, our primary responsibilities are to the citizens of Rolesville, not to that entity. The citizens of Rolesville elected us, you know, and then there are people that are able to say, well, this would be to their benefit if we merge. So there are several sides to the coin, but this is something that's going to have to be worked out. If we had a majority on that board, if we asked them to change their charter to include, if they have 7 members, to increase it where where we could have 4 members on that board, or 4, actually more than that, unless some of them quit, where we would have a majority on that board, then we would control that board.
Who's we, Jackie?
This town board right here, you.
Yeah, and that's where it confused me a little bit, David, is our consultant said we need to start populating that board as we go through this transition period. But I don't think that's going to be practical, is what you're saying.
Well, again, there's nothing precluding a board member from serving on this other entity. So there's a legal preclusion of a board member serving in another elected position, but you're not legally precluded from serving in an appointed position of another public body. And certainly there's no preclusion from you serving on the board of a private nonprofit, which is what the fire department is. You can do that. The question is what disclosures and what limits there may be on your future votes. That's the only question. And I have not spoken with the consultant as to exactly what his thinking was with regard to membership spots on this private nonprofit board. We do need to keep in mind, however, that if we are in a position of controlling a nonprofit board, that nonprofit board now is a governmental entity that needs to follow all of the public body laws that we normally think of for ourselves or for a planning commission. So they'll be subject to open meeting laws and public records laws and those things, and financial reporting for that matter.
So I'm confused. So this board would only exist during the transition and then it goes away? Or is this a permanent board that would continue into the future? Help me understand that, somebody.
It is my opinion that this board, once we become, if we merge them into the town, that board will go away completely.
That's my opinion.
This is temporary.
I don't see the reason, right, that they would be there anymore if there's no fire department for them to be a board of.
Right.
So I don't know. And listen to Dave sharing all the stuff about the law, and we're butting up against the whole 10,000. I don't know. I see this as, my mom says, if it walks like a duck and smells like a duck and quacks like a duck, I just don't like the appearance of a board member sitting on that board. That to me feels like, not legally, but feels like a conflict to me.
Same here, Sheila. I feel the same way, and Jackie and I talked about that because there's so many unknowns with this merger and what's going on in the inner works, and to have a board member sitting on that board, whether it stays or goes. And my understanding is they do want to stay after this is all done. but maybe I have old news. I just think it's too much of a conflict and too much of a risk for this board. Because we're gonna have to answer to the masses if something comes out of this information gathering, and then when you have a board member sitting on that board, how do you explain that? Why would you even want to put yourself in that position?
And
If
Michelle,
we have this other committee that we're forming right now, and if you're on that committee right there, Jackie, and you're the liaison with the fire departments, then, I'm sorry?
that should be enough.
Yeah, then why would you need a seat at that table?
Okay. I feel like the consensus of our board, the town board, is for me to continue in the position of liaison. Nothing more, other than being on this committee that we just talked about. And I will convey that to Spence Jones later this week. He is the chair of that board. But that board also understands, as I've already told them, in all likelihood, that once this merger is complete, they will go away completely. So they are.
How recent was that? Because that was not my understanding, but my information may be old.
I told them that that was my opinion. That board would go away. Now, we may call on them as an advisory board from time to time to help.
And then they're not going away.
Well, I mean, yes, they would. I mean, we wouldn't keep every one of them. You want a couple of them to help you as we, for instance, as you buy new equipment.
Right.
As you.
So, yeah, and if I may, remember when I introduced the proposal we're going to talk about here in the next 2 or 3 months in a small group is the role of the board afterwards. And typically, they are, if they are interested and you're interested in using them, a lot of times they're used for foundations, helping support of foundations, or fundraising for the fire department or something like that because of their essentially connections, right? They already had. But typically they don't have any other functions.
So don't even call them a board, call them a committee.
What's that?
I said this, and don't recognize it as a board, because to me that has a lot more.
Right. Yeah, they would be probably called something else.
Yeah, like a advisory committee. Yes.
So that'll be figured out with the agreement.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you for the guidance.
Great.
Next agenda item?
Yes.
Yep. Next agenda item.
Okay. Real briefly, I included the packet in your packet, the submittal by Wake County to Congressman David Price for the community project request for the library here in Rolesville. I wanted to make sure you had a chance to look at that, see what the county put in there. I've not heard anything from Congressman Price's office. I did make an inquiry, but I've not heard back from them. I'll probably reach out again. There probably will be a decision made by that office on this request form fairly quickly as far as they're promoting it further in the appropriation process at the federal government. But I wanted to make sure you had a chance to look at it, and if you had any questions about it, I think it's a great effort. I'm very pleased that the county did this. I will tell you though that when we have our discussions on the American Recovery Plan funds, I think this is a nice, good effort by the county, but we ought to continue dialogue with the county to make sure we try and get something soon. This is kind of a long shot, but I would like to keep this in front of them, and we may have different ways of doing that. So I just, when we get to the point of talking about that, I'll bring those ideas up. I don't have them off the top of my head today. What I'm trying to say is we shouldn't just rely upon this. I think it's now that we've got this effort going, we should continue this effort with the county and continue moving forward on this. So
You lost me. I'm sorry. So you're saying this particular library request
It's a long
or
shot.
Mm-hmm.
projection, you're saying we should continue going with additional efforts with the county?
Yes,
Or, okay, in addition to,
yes.
okay, just clarifying.
This
Thank you.
has, the odds of this is pretty significant.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so we ought to take this great momentum we have with them and saying, how can we decrease our odds further?
And keep pushing. I got you.
Okay?
Yep.
That's all I have on that one. Amy, do you want to do the COVID leave review policy?
What about the Terrell Plantation stormwater?
Oh, excuse me. You're right. Thank you. Next one. Terrell Plantation. Where is that in my packet? Excuse me just a second. Yes. In your packet is a memo from me that recaps my history on this effort with this HOA, Terrell Plantation, on their stormwater pond that was deficient when the subdivision was built. And as you remember, back in early 2019, they came to the town and asked for your help in participating in funding that. And you did in a meeting agree verbally to do that up to $18,000. We also talked at that meeting, there should be an agreement completed to do that, and that agreement never took place. But they did go off and we didn't know if they're working on it. And then they came back and reported, hey, we're doing this. And they go, oh, okay. And they went off and did it, which is good for them. And so today you have a copy of the engineering report that they have completed. They have generally completed it. They have one more last piece they need to do. They have made the payment of $28,000 to the engineering firm to complete that. They will be requesting and request $14,000 to settle this with the town. And we have approvals from Wake County Stormwater Department and our construction inspector that the improvements have been properly placed. And this now makes this a designed and approved stormwater improvement for that subdivision. So this would complete this saga. If you are amenable to this and continue to be amenable to this, we would have our town attorney draw up an agreement with the HOA stating that this is it.
Final.
This is our effort, that they cannot come back into town for any other reasons or claims. And that in return, we would reimburse them for up to $14,000 for the completion of this project.
I have a question. Why is it that the town is not required to pay for this, this project?
Why was the town not
Why is the
required?
town not required? Because I do recall the conversation a couple of years ago and all that led up to it. So are you saying that we could technically not be required because it wasn't in writing? Because you did emphasize verbal.
Yeah, well, I said we're required because we have not signed an agreement with anybody. You did a verbal agreement. It was a previous board before you, even though April's really the only new board member on this board. So there's nothing here legally that makes you required to do this. But you chose to, you did say you would do it 2 years ago. They've taken you for your word. They went out and did it.
I'm not saying not to, so let's see.
That's
Okay.
why.
I just want to know why you said that. All right, thank you.
And I understand why, because a previous board, in fact, I think I was on that board, approved that retention pond or stormwater vehicle back when George Van Nortwood developed Terrell Plantation and submitted the site plan. Ronnie helped me. I think you were there too. And it turned out it wasn't big enough, but we didn't know that at the time. So I'm hoping, I think that it's the right thing to do, but I'm hoping this doesn't set a precedent.
That's my concern.
Yeah, and that's where I think we need to really be. And I think, Kelly, the problem was, everything was accepted from the developer and he walked away. And, you know, there's a lot of these retention ponds going in. And I think we got a process now that all that is checked out and certified and before the developer walks away, right? I mean, that's the
Yes, and
problem.
we also maintain and keep the bond before that too.
Right. So, you know, we should not have any problems with this in the future because really developers should have paid for this. This should have been a developer payment thing before they said that we're done with it, but they finished up and snuck away before. If I recall, they did that before, you know, beforehand, and it kind of stuck the town or the homeowner association with fixing it. If I recall, somebody
That's
had
correct. You did a good summary.
and the developer said they won't want to fix it because they gone. So, you know, I think it went back and forth for town and we kind of agreed to kind of split the costs, if I recall. But really the thing we need to make sure is we got processes won't happen again.
Honey, I think there was.
Mr. Mayor, and if I may, just for clarity on this point, this is a private obligation, and this private HOA, as best we can determine from the history and from your memories, did make a claim claiming that the town perhaps shared in some liability for how this private obligation ended up at the feet of the HOA. Without accepting any liability for that claim, we agreed in principle to a settlement of that claim. And now your town attorney will memorialize that settlement with a settlement agreement and a release.
Right.
Therefore, there's no precedent set. This is not anything more than settlement of this claim.
Well said.
All right, that's good.
Do we subrogate these issues? Okay, never mind. Moving on. Moving on. I'm good.
Okay, you'll see this probably not May 4th, but a June meeting on consent probably or thereabouts, and we'll get it done, and I will convey to the HOA that we're working on it and moving forward. Thank you.
All right,
Next time, Amy.
No, it's Amy.
Okay, so when the pandemic started, federal government passed legislation that required certain employers, and the town was one of those employers, required those employers to provide a special COVID sick leave in cases where an employee got COVID and missed work, or was under quarantine for quote COVID and was unable to work remotely, or had to care for somebody in their family who had COVID. Those federal benefits expired December 31st of 2020. So in January, staff brought to you the policy of extending that type of leave now through a local policy, where we call it COVID sick leave is what we've been calling it. And so you chose to do that, and you extended on the town level a special kind of COVID sick leave to employees for similar reasons, and you made that effective through March 31st. We chose the March 31st deadline because we knew the vaccine was coming, but we weren't sure of the timeline and wanted to see how things rolled out. So that special leave has expired, and so now we're revisiting the issue. Obviously, now employees are all eligible for the vaccine, but it does take some time to work through that process. There's a certain amount of weeks that must pass between vaccinations and after you have received all the vaccinations. And so staff is now recommending that you renew this special COVID sick leave and extend it through June 30th. As I noted in the memo, we don't anticipate any further recommendations for the extension of this leave. By the time we reach June 30th, every employee will have had the opportunity to receive the full course of the vaccination at that point. And so with CDC guidelines, et cetera, Should somebody be fully vaccinated, we expect the quarantine issue to be mitigated, as well as the likelihood of them even contracting the disease. I will note a couple of changes to the policy from the one that you adopted in January. This new one really streamlines the whole thing. Back in January, we weren't sure if there would be new federal legislation to extend it. And so there's some references to that and some technicalities associated with that. They've been removed. So this is very much streamlined. It's just about if you have it or if you have to quarantine or if you're caring for somebody who is sick. It does add one other thing, and that is it provides for 2 days, 2 sick days for an employee who has a negative physical reaction to the vaccine. We do know that some people have a bad reaction and sometimes get a flu-like feeling, might be out for a while. So this does include 2 days under that circumstance. So that's what's here for you. We anticipate if you're amenable to this and something you want to pursue, we would anticipate this being on the May 4th consent agenda.
I have a question, Amy. Oh, I'm sorry, Sheila. So is that based on everybody getting the vaccination?
Right, that's how we're looking at this, is that all employees are eligible to take the vaccine.
But if they don't, how does that affect this policy?
So, right, so if you choose to extend this leave and it expires June 30th, if someone were to contract COVID in, say, July, and they have to miss work because of illness, then they would use their sick leave balance that they currently have. There would be no special sick leave for it. They would just have to use the sick leave they already accrue as they go through payroll.
Oh, so whether they were vaccinated or not, it doesn't matter at that point.
That's right.
Amy, does that?
No, go ahead. That was it. That's
Sorry.
fine.
No, were you finished, Michelle? I'm sorry.
I really was. You're good. Go ahead.
So I was going to say the June 30th, you said is the federal standard?
No, we're just trying to go by quarters.
Oh, I see.
Figuring June 30th seems like a good, and everybody should be able to be through the process by June 30th if they wanted to get the vaccine.
Right, if they choose.
Yeah, and just another side note, a lot of municipalities extended this leave. Some of them picked March 30th, but a lot of them picked June 30th. So we expect to see a lot of other municipalities coming up on this deadline and the termination of that benefit right around the same time period.
So they could get up to 14 days if they're exposed to COVID, and then they could get 2 days if they have a reaction to the vaccine, if they get the vaccine. So in essence, 16 days.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it does provide in here, if you have already used the special COVID sick leave, you don't get to use it again.
That was my next question. Is it per occurrence? Because people can be reinfected with COVID. Anyway, that's interesting. But hopefully that won't happen.
Okay,
right.
I think that's where my question comes in at. If before June 30th, some people opt not to get the vaccine and they become exposed, and then they expose others, say in town hall, how does that work? If they didn't get the vaccine in the first place, are they still eligible for that benefit?
So the benefits through June 30th apply to everyone, whether they got the vaccine or not.
Okay.
Yeah, can't discriminate.
No, I was wondering how that would work. So, because you can't force anybody to take the vaccine. So is that a penalty or it just doesn't matter? But that's fine.
Yeah, I've seen this in other companies. Our company has it. This is the standard when it started out. So I am completely in support of that.
I am too.
And as clarity on that point, all essential workers can be mandated to get the vaccine.
Really?
And there's an open question as to broader mandate. But as to essential workers, that is not a question.
You faded out a little bit, Dave. Can you repeat that?
So essential workers can be mandated under town policy to receive the vaccine. The exceptions would be medical exceptions or religious objection, sincerely held religious belief. But other than that, that can be mandated as a town policy out of HR, out of town staff management.
Interesting. All righty then.
Very good. Okay, Kelly, anything else?
No, I want to go back to Amy. We didn't bring up, where will you be posting the budget come tomorrow for public and
Sure.
such?
Yep. So actually, it's out there right now. It's a little buried. It's under financial documents on the finance webpage. So it's out there right now. I posted that today. And tomorrow I'm going to have a news item. So it'll be on the front page of the website. I wanted to wait till we had the presentation tonight, but there will be a link to the budget. And it mentions the public hearing on May 4th as well.
Thank you.
Love that.
That's all I have, Mayor.
That's all we got for the workshop?
That's
Okay, great, good job. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you,
May
Amy.
I ask one question? May I ask one
Yeah.
question? The very last page of this packet, Amy, what is that for? It's only like a few dollars, but I'm like, what is that for? A tax approved and accepted the enclosed tax report?
Oh, true.
On the very last page before the booklet is, oh,
Like a rebate.
Yeah, what is that for?
So it's been a while since I've seen these. I believe these, I think they're going through the clerk. But basically when Wake County refunds property taxes, a lot of times you see this for vehicles, for example. Like if you paid property taxes on a vehicle and then you turned in the plates, you get a rebate for
Got
the
it.
portion of the property tax. It looks like one of these is a business account, so there may have been some property valuation that was in dispute, and they want to, the business got some of their property tax rebated. So that's basically what this report is.
Okay.
It's for
Okay,
transparency.
thank you. I had never seen that.
Yep.
So I was like, what the heck? Okay, thank you.
so I guess the GFOA doesn't give cash, they just give certificates and awards.
That's right.
Well, congratulations though, again, because I think Rolesville gets it like every year, it seems like, right? They're acknowledged with that.
I think we've got it 3 years now.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah.
Mayor, just to remind you, 1 o'clock on Thursday, your fund continues. Virtual. LDO. I will be joining you late. That day I'm interviewing, participating in group interview of 6 HR director candidates. That date was predetermined when we started the search, and unfortunately that afternoon was picked for this, so I will come in late to that session, but Julie and group will be participating with you and the planning board on that session.
Can I ask Amy a question, and you as well, Kelly? Someone had said something to me about, the fees we were talking about in regards, this is a little bit off task here, the fees we were referring to for vending trucks. Does Wake County still allow that? Is there something that I'm missing? Do you know? what I'm
I can't, Amy, do you know the answer?
You're talking about the fee for food trucks?
Correct.
We have a fee,
So what was it that
and
the
then there's a
county-
health department fee. I'm
Right.
sure.
I don't know, because I was having a conversation with somebody and they were like, wait a minute, well, I thought that the county had stopped allowing those fees.
Were you thinking of business privilege licenses?
Well, those are still in effect though, right? They better be, because I pay mine.
No.
So I don't know if it was, I don't know, I'm not the privilege license, just the fees you charge at the town, charging fees for, as an example, food trucks. So the county didn't stop that? I didn't know that they did or did not. I didn't think that it was an issue, but someone brought that up to me and saying that they thought the county doesn't allow that. You can basically,
I think
It
they've got
doesn't make
it confused with some impact fees that were stopped one time long ago.
no, not impact fees.
Yeah. No, I have heard nothing.
I don't know.
So I wonder if it may be what Dave mentioned, the privilege license.
No,
So
not the
we used to
privilege
have
license.
local. No, that's not.
Health department?
I'm not even sure. I just need to get more information. I thought maybe you all would know, and if you don't, then maybe it's not correct. But I'm gonna find out, because that was something that was brought up. Somebody watched something and then they asked that question.
Yeah, for the health department, we had that for the 4th of July. They had to do that. I know that for sure. That was a separate fee.
Not the health department, talking about each town, each municipality
Okay.
individually, not privilege license. But I'll find out and I'll see what they were talking about.
All right,
Anyway,
good
that's it for
night.
me.
Very good. Very good. Kelly, anything else?
No.
Well, thank you and Amy. Appreciate that. From the board, any of the board members got any closing comments, anything to make? One thing I will mention, some of you probably are aware, seen, May 6th is a National Day of Prayer. Typically we do something here in Rolesville. We didn't last year. We had a virtual last year because of the COVID. But this year, one of the churches will host a National Day of Prayer event. Probably do it in the evening. We've kind of been talking about that a little bit. Evening works better for people that work. You know, I think in the past it's been mornings. Some of y'all attended, I think. And I think this year we'll have it in the evening, probably from like 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 or something like that. So maybe more people can attend. And more come out on that, but kind of put May 6th on your calendar as a National Day of Prayer. And you know, I think we got a lot to be thankful for this year with this COVID kind of lifting its veil over us, and the pandemic is lifting a little bit, and the vaccine may be working, seems like. So a lot to be thankful for, and a lot to be thankful for in prayer. And it's been a tough year, so but kind of looking forward to that. And
I do.
who was
Sheila, I do. I agree with you totally on that and completely. I do want to mention just real quick, I really appreciate this comprehensive visual view of the budget. This helps tremendously in tying it to the goals. That has been a huge process improvement for us. You guys have done a phenomenal job on that. Thank you very, very much. And then I want to also mention, diversity and inclusion is near and dear to my heart. I have a lot of training that I used to do in the past in that. And I want to highlight and commend our police department for the great job that they do in protecting Rolesville and keeping us safe. And I also want to highlight the verdict that was given today on the George Ford killing, because I know America couldn't ignore that. And I know our Rolesville police are nothing like that. And I'm thankful for that. But I'm also thankful that I won't say justice was served, because that man is gone. He will never be back. But I will say accountability was held. And I just want to say I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad that we have police in Rolesville that treat our citizens and people who come through our town with respect. So I just wanted to highlight that before we go.
I think that's well said. Appreciate that, Sheila. Really, the police department is here to protect and serve. And, and protect and serve covers it all. And as long as they do that, they're doing a good job, I think.
Exactly.
So thank you for that, bringing that to attention. And so with that, we'll end the meeting. Appreciate everybody able to attend tonight, and all the ones watching the live stream. Thank you for watching tonight, and we will see you next meeting. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thursday. Bye, everyone. Have a good
Good night.
night.
Bye.
Good night. Good night, Rolesville.